haven't enabled my camera. I think they're afraid I'm going to embarrass us all. You know, I like to tap dance and act a fool. But anyway, welcome to our Ask the Experts session on future marketing trends featuring Alex Mellon. Alex, whenever you're ready, you can enable your camera, mic, whatever you're doing today. Hey,
how's it going?
How are you, my old buddy?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
How are the sessions been
You
going?
sound just a little quiet to me, and I'm not sure why.
A little quiet? I can make it louder. Hold on. How about now? A little bit better?
Yeah, that's better.
How have the sessions been going? I haven't been able to join any of them, but you guys started yesterday, right?
We kicked it off yesterday. It's going great. I'm really happy, and I've been especially happy with these Ask the Experts sessions because it's something totally new, and most people are used to in a conference, whether it's live or digital, just watching a presentation. And these have been really interactive, and we've been getting a lot of great information out of it. But the platform is going to be open through next Friday, so you have time to go back and watch any of the sessions that you miss.
Perfect.
Are you painting? You got a little project going on?
Yeah. So we had to close our offices. We have 6 offices, 1 in the U.S., 5 overseas. Everything is still closed, so everyone's working from home. So I've been working from my home office here. My wife thought that I'm too secluded and remote here at this side of the house, so we're adding a door to make me less remote. And of course, like any contractor situation right now, contractors disappeared. So I have a door at least. It was worse before, so can't complain.
I like your door.
The door is there. It's a lot better as a door than just a random hole in the wall. Because I would do meetings and people would be like, "Oh, are you planning on doing something with that hole in your wall?" So a door is definitely better.
It's a good conversation piece. I like it. Well, so we're going to talk a little about marketing trends. Alex is our own Zoltar, if you will, about what's now and next in marketing. I hope everybody got that big reference there. But I don't know, I'm ready to fire you because we talked back in May about this, and I don't remember you telling us we were still going to be knee deep in this pandemic by December. Where were you there?
You know what? It's been well. First of all, I think I'm not the only one who was probably. Well, I can't say I was too optimistic. I knew it would take us a while to get with it, but I certainly personally thought we'd be in a slightly better place. Even from our company standpoint, we were planning on opening the offices after the summer, and obviously didn't open them. So it's been tough. I still think we're in the final stretch of everything. I think literally as recently as last night they announced in the UK that they're administering the vaccine now. I think and the US will be following very shortly. I think the US is supposed to start next week. So obviously it won't be an instant gratification type of situation, but I think within 60 to 90 days it'll improve the situation tremendously.
Great. We all hope that that's the case. But I'm just kidding. Alex is totally omnipotent. Can you tell the folks that are here today a little about yourself and what makes you such a smarty pants in the field of future marketing trends?
I appreciate the intro. My background, I worked at Publicis for 3 years, working with Samsung, doing digital for Samsung, and then managing digital for Walmart. And I left that position, even though I really loved it. I left it to start this company with my younger brother. We started Smart Sites to help small and medium-sized businesses with their digital presence to the extent that Publicis and the bigger agencies are helping enterprise clients. I think there's I could turn up the volume. I think there's a lot of really cool things that are being done at the enterprise level in the digital space and has been for 10, 15, 20 years that hasn't trickled down to the SMB space. So that's what we've been doing. We have 155 full-time employees now, 6 offices worldwide. We're doubling in size about 18 months or so, and I think are on most of the fastest growing and top rated digital agency lists.
Awesome. Congratulations on all of your success
Thank
as
you. Thank you.
well. We had another request. Can you turn your mic up just a little bit more, please?
Yeah, I put it all the way. Do you know if there's any settings in this program? Let me look really quick. Right now.
When you're closer to it, it sounds a lot
Yeah,
better.
I'll stay closer and I put the volume all the way. I think they'll make it a little bit better.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. All right. So anybody, if you have any questions for Alex, please place them in the chat. You can also say, hey, Katie, turn on my mic or my camera and you can join the conversation with Alex. But to start off, so when we talked in May, I just listened back to that conversation and it's really interesting what a different time we were in then. But are there any predictions that you made, any advice you gave, your clients based on trends that you saw burgeoning, because of the pandemic? We talked a lot about the digital space being even stronger than it was. What's going on in your world and who you're advising?
Yeah, so I think generally speaking, same as my sentiment has always been. I think if there's any silver lining from COVID is that it really accelerated the acceptance of digital, and you would think start of 2020 digital is already pretty prominent, but you'd be surprised there are a lot of businesses that still wouldn't do it, right? If you think about local restaurants, they got by with just their Yelp page in a lot of cases. Local businesses like your local butcher, right? Businesses that traditionally didn't need digital in any sense now are reliant on it, and are the successful businesses are pivoting their strategy to fully embrace digital. Not to say that the future is going to be 100% digital, but it's very important to diversify the channels you're on, and digital will become more prominent. So I think that will continue to be the case across every single industry. I was reading an interview, I think a couple of weeks ago, that the CEO of Kohl's did. And Kohl's is interesting because their business, their retail, they were on the slower end to embrace digital. Their retail store, right? They sell clothing. Their CEO said that the COVID has accelerated the embrace of digital by at least 5 years. So I think that's pretty accurate. I think a lot of the things that businesses and even people are doing right now, like the whole work from home situation, this virtual conference, right? Um, it wouldn't have happened otherwise, probably for a good 5 years. I think this conference obviously would have been an in-person conference. A lot of the conferences I was scheduled to speak at, well, all of them either canceled or became virtual, right? Those were their only options. But a lot of conferences have successfully embraced digital, kind of like MadCon has, and I think eventually the same thing would have happened. Probably yes, but probably in 3 to 5 years. So I think as we think about the changes that COVID has brought on. I think the major one is really the acceleration of digital in every sense of the world, every sense of the word, from video conferencing, like we're doing now, to how we work, how we behave, how businesses reach consumers. So it's really the best way to think of it is really an acceleration of adaptation of digital.
It's interesting that you mentioned the silver lining because, of course we wish that we could have gathered everybody together for MadCon. Although it's really impressive that we've brought together such a global audience. I mean, we have folks here from all around the world. And so it's nice that we're able to welcome so many people. And it's, easy for us to record all of these being in a digital space so that the content can live on and we can repurpose it and continue to educate. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we're nothing if not adaptable. Are there any trends that have come up during this period that you think are going to phase out, or what's going to normalize?
Yeah, so that's funny enough. So that's been the number one question I've been hearing from our clients, and really as I do more and more speaking sessions, that's probably the most common things people ask. What's gonna stick, right, and what's gonna go back to the way it was. I think it's almost like a half and half scenario, and we could even take conferences as an example. Are conferences all going to be always virtual going forward now? I don't think so. Just speaking to companies that put together these conferences and attendees. There's a lot of pent-up demand for in-person conferences, right? You guys and a lot of other people have done an amazing job simulating the experience virtually, but at the end of the day, the networking component and the in-person socialization is just hard to have on a virtual level. So will there be virtual conferences going forward? Absolutely, a lot more than there have been in the past years. Is it going to go back? Is it going to be all virtual conferences or go back to all in person? Right, so it's going to be somewhere in the middle, and it varies industry to industry. But I think it's the same idea that a lot of the behavior is going to stick. But some of it's going to go back, and I think it's going to vary person to person. We do a lot in the automotive space. We work with a lot with automotive brands and dealerships, and that's a very interesting space because for a very, very long time outside of Tesla, the automotive experience was an in-person experience, right? If you bought a car in the last couple of years, did you buy it online? Would you even consider doing the entire experience online, right? Like from selecting it to negotiating financing. It's really an in-person experience that was very rapidly pushed virtual. In our area here in the NYC Metro, in March and April, dealerships were not allowed to be open. So they had to very quickly adapt to the virtual environment, start offering virtual shopping, right? It's a whole new way of selling cars. You have to first of all train the salespeople to sell it virtually. You have to get consumers comfortable with it, right? Are consumers comfortable negotiating finance rates over live chat? Some are, some aren't. Delivering the car, people now want contactless delivery. You want to purchase a car from a dealership and someone to drop it off and walk away, so you don't have to walk into a busy dealership. How much of that is going to stick as COVID rates go down? I'm sure some of it will. I'm sure people now that have been using digital more will more likely expect to be able to do things digitally, virtually, remote. I think the biggest suggestion I could really make to businesses is you really have to be flexible. I think flexibility is going to be key to success. I think for the foreseeable future, consumers are going to have different comfort levels with absolutely everything, from buying cars to virtually versus in person to really any kind of in-person interaction. Some people will be comfortable with it, some will not, and I think that's going to last for years. So really the path to success is to be as flexible as possible, to offer consumers as many options to interact and do business with you as possible, and really be agile and react to the marketplace. For example, if we go back to lockdowns in a couple of weeks, which could happen as many areas have gone to lockdowns, including Los Angeles last week. Businesses have to be very agile in changing their marketing strategy and changing their operations. And on the flip side, if the vaccine's super successful and then everyone starts going back to work and really craving in-person experiences, you really have to be agile to adjust your marketing and your operations to that as well.
I know that I, as a consumer, have gotten used to the convenience that's come, with everybody having to go digital. And I loved test driving a car, and they gave me the keys and I got to just go on my own and low pressure sales. And so I think we also have to adapt to that. And in our expert session with Corinne on data and analytics, she was talking a lot about the boomer and senior segment and how that's a sector that's figured out how to use Instacart to get their groceries. I mean, now we all have to change how we work with different segments. We have a question from Trisha, who wants to know regarding consumer behavior, is local retail going to rebound? She's from the New York City area.
So I think it will rebound. I think it won't be to the levels it was before. So it depends on the retail, right? Is mall traffic in the next 6 months going to be what it was pre-COVID? No, it won't be. Is it going to be rebound higher than it was the last 6 months? Absolutely. I think it's going to be another one of those scenarios where some people will ultimately not feel comfortable in a retail setting for a year or two, right? Maybe more. Some like you were saying, just got too comfortable doing it the other way, right? So many experiences that as we've gone through COVID, it really just strikes my mind, like, why hasn't this always been this way, right? For me, we had to, my wife's car broke, so we had to buy a new car during COVID, which was an interesting experience. And like I was saying, it was a contactless delivery. We bought a car, they drove it here, and they took her trade-in away, right? And I was like, wow, why wasn't this always like that, right? Because prior to that, you have to go to a dealership, you have to negotiate there, you sit there, they go get their manager, general manager, and then you have to show them your trade-in, they have to think about it, they don't want your trade-in, you go to a different dealership. This was a completely seamless experience, and I didn't have to leave my house. So not exactly, obviously, the retail that Trisha might be thinking, but I think similarly, some consumers will just prefer to continue doing things e-commerce wise. But I think in person will rebound, and it depends how you think about local retail. So our question was, is local retail going to rebound? If you consider e-commerce as part of your retail strategy, I think it'll bounce back higher than it was before. I think there's a lot of pent up demand in the economy. I think there's a lot of government assistance on the cusp of coming that will drive a lot of that. Just some of the let me pull up. I did a session recently for the Small Business Expo about retail and holiday retail. So let me just pull that up really quick because I had good numbers to share from that. Um, Slides. Sorry for the quick delay. Cool. I have the numbers here. So I'll just go through really quickly through the math just to get everyone on the same page for retail in general. So for the first time since 2009, retail sales are expected to decline significantly. So total U.S. retail sales in the U.S. is going to drop 10.5% this year for 2020, which again is the first time since 2009. However, digital is projected to increase 18%. So even though retail is down overall, unemployment's the highest levels ever. E-commerce sales up actually 18%. Adobe did a study in, I think they did it in July, but for June data. But in June 2020, e-commerce sales were up 76% year over year. Just when you thought digital adoption was already high in 2020, literally e-commerce sales increased 76% year over year. There's also a lot of really interesting data that shows that consumers are considering brands they've never considered before. So if consumers who are used to going to a specific store and buying a specific brand are now more likely to research new brand and look for new things online. People are searching for new brands and new things online a lot more. Holiday shopping, where's the number for it? Holiday shopping, 72% of consumers plan to shop completely online for holidays this year. So again, very long-winded answer, but I think retail in general will bounce back. In-store retail, probably not as much as it used to be, probably for at least a year or 2 years, depending how everything pans out. But I think online is the really silver lining here. Online retail will eclipse last year. It continues to increase. It will continue to increase. People searching for new brands online is increasing at record pace. So I think the opportunities really are in the online space versus waiting for in-person retail to pick up.
Thank you for those stats. Funny, Janina, I was just going to ask a very similar question. What are platforms that you highly recommend for digital marketing besides the big guys, which I'm guessing we're talking Facebook and Google? You read my mind.
So as an agency, we spend the most with Google and Facebook. This year, we will manage about 50 million on both platforms. They continue to be the main, I guess, source of digital advertising and still provide the best results. Not only are we do it because they're the big guys, right? But because they still provide the strongest results. For anything like service-based, like non-branding, it's very tough to beat Google. If you're, for example, a local plumber, and someone comes home, their pipe's leaking, they take out their cell phone and they Google plumber near me. You're not gonna beat the relevancy and immediacy of that search and click on any other platform. And the flip side is Facebook, where you could target audiences and do a lot of brand building stuff and awareness and things like that. So those continue to be the two big main ones. I'll caveat that with we've traditionally haven't done a lot on Bing, but recently we've been doing more, and it's no longer Bing. It's now Microsoft Ads. I think even Bing, the search engine, is going to become Microsoft Bing, and then they're slowly going to get rid of Bing, the word Bing altogether. But Microsoft Ads, even though they have very little presence for mobile, it's mostly a desktop play. But the performance there has been a lot better in the last 3 to 6 months than previously. And they're doing a lot to really mimic all of the functionality of Google with much lower cost per clicks. The audience who use Microsoft Ads is actually usually more affluent, spend more, and they're unique. And by unique, I mean people who use Bing don't use Google, and people who use Google don't use Bing. So it's incremental business they could get. And I've seen a lot of people kind of not do Microsoft Ads at all, just because it's just an extra platform to manage, right? But it's incremental visitors that you're losing. So that's the only thing I'd say. They're probably still the big guys, right? Part of it. And then the only other platform I could think of is LinkedIn, which in the last 6 to 12 months has really upgraded their advertising functionality and the kind of things you could do on there. We've had decent success with the form on there, so you could have an ad that someone clicks and a form comes up, and the form goes straight into your CRM or wherever you want it to go. So for B2B, that's been pretty powerful. But aside from that, we usually, so us as an agency for our own marketing for smart sites, we spend maybe, I don't know, 150,000 a month on our own marketing. We set aside 10% for experimental platforms. And I would even call things like Twitter experimental. So we're always testing new things, but I can't say there's anything new on the horizon that has really produced amazing results. And we test things like TikTok and all the new stuff as well, but nothing that's produced any outstanding results that would dethrone Google, Facebook.
I'm glad you mentioned your 10% rule. I know it's not necessarily a forward-looking, well, I guess it is, because you have to experiment to figure out what's really working. But I love your 10% rule to always be investing in new tech, to be able to test what's working for your brand. And very interesting on Bing. I mean, I basically had written it off as a marketer. What about, I mean, because our favorite duopoly still exists, are there any changes or new offerings from Google or Facebook that you're excited about that you think marketers should be watching?
Good question. So Facebook, in terms of offerings, I feel like they've almost rolled back the other way, right? There was a lot of really cool things you could do with Facebook audiences that you no longer can do. They've rolled it back to a point that you can't really even target zips or cities if you're targeting for financial related offers, and even anything auto related is part of that, although Google did that a little bit as well. They've really rolled back a lot of functionality. Facebook themselves are pushing more of their machine learning features more than letting marketers do things outside of the box to creatively get customers. I think they just got burned with Cambridge Analytica and a couple other things. So if anything, they went the other way. Google, on the other hand, has been doing a lot of audience functionality to really compete with Facebook. And they've come out with a lot of really cool stuff that's been kind of under the radar. Number one, you could import your own audiences into Google, which you could for a while, but people don't really understand the full benefits of that. So for example, if you're a car dealership, you take your database of all your customers that you know their leases are ending in 6 months, you upload them, and then you show them an ad saying, come back to us and we'll do a lease pull ahead. And you target them on the display network where you only pay per click. So in a scenario where we ran that for a dealership, for example, they wound up getting any. So the data set's not necessarily big, right? It's literally your customers, but in their case, it got like, I think 50,000 impressions, 54 clicks. It cost them, I think, $54 a click. half of the people who clicked wound up pulling ahead their lease. So literally for $54, they got over 20 people to come into a dealership and pull ahead their lease. So that's really powerful stuff that people don't really realize they could be doing. Also, as of recently, you could create your own custom audience in Google. I don't want to necessarily encourage this kind of behavior, but an interesting application is you could create an audience of people searching for your competitor. So if you think about that, let's think about, I don't know, Ford versus Chevy, let's say, right? So Ford could put together a list of people who have Googled Chevy or Googled Chevy lease or something, maybe even more purchase intent based, and then serve them ads for Ford across the display network. So you literally could create a custom list based on what people searched on Google and then target them off Google on the display network. So there's a lot of really cool audience things like that that really, I think there's a lot of opportunities outside of the box with not a lot of limitations right now that are definitely worth thinking about.
Really interesting and related, and to an extent you've answered this, but Karen asked about some other specific companies. Do you think some of the new platforms that arose out of our political and cultural climate, like Parler and DuckDuckGo, might take a bite out of Twitter, Google, and others?
It might. They haven't yet. They might. Parler saw amazing growth for a couple days, a couple weeks. It's flattened out a little bit. I haven't looked into their advertising networks or platforms. DuckDuckGo saw some increases, but ultimately not. Google's market share didn't really get impacted a lot more. I think if anything, it'll create more headaches for marketers because you're gonna have to be on more platforms. I already know that a lot of people don't do like Bing, Microsoft ads because the market share is only 5 to 10%. Parler, DuckDuckGo is going to be single digit, not even single digit, it's going to be less than 1% market share. Is it worth chasing those platforms? Maybe not. There's already kind of a lot of those fringe platforms are just usually not worth the time invested. For example, for those that know, when Yahoo made their deal with Microsoft and gave Microsoft access to all of their search advertising. So all search advertising on Yahoo runs through Microsoft. For those that read all the fine print that when that deal happened, Yahoo actually kept advertising on their own properties, especially in their apps. So for example, if you use Yahoo Finance, the ads you see on there are not powered by Microsoft. The ads on there are powered by a platform Yahoo created themselves back in the day when they thought they'd be competing with Google and Microsoft, called Gemini. So you could actually go and sign up and put ads on Yahoo Gemini, who probably still have a bigger market share than Parler or DuckDuckGo. Is it worth the time and investment? Usually not. Gemini is actually a very cheap platform. I think unlike Google, they actually cap your max CPCs. I don't know if they still do it, but that's what they used to do. So they won't let you pay more than like 10 cents per click. So it's usually very cost effective, but the volume is so low that it's usually not worth the time, usually not possible to do A/B testing or anything like that. So ultimately, I don't think marketers are gonna divert their attention to Parler and DuckDuckGo when they're abandoning Microsoft Ads, which in some places has a 10% market share.
Thanks. We've gotten a bunch of questions. So Eric wants to know, with work from home becoming the norm, have we seen the end of traditional, quote unquote, traditional marketing tactics like outbound telemarketing and direct mail?
Work from home is a very interesting question because it's something that we struggle with ourselves as a company at Smart Sites. We have the offices, we have long-term commitments to the offices. We haven't used the offices in 9 months. Our headquarters in Paramus, actually, we did a huge remodel. We got a new office to accommodate 4 times more people, and we had our grand opening in February 2020. So work from home is an issue that's near and dear to me. I'll say this, I don't think we're gonna be a completely work from home culture 6 months from now. Just speaking to a lot of my own employees, a lot of people actually want to go back to an office. A lot of people are now sitting at home, right? We have a lot of younger people that may be living with parents or sitting at home by themselves, and they really miss the social interactions of an office. So I think ultimately we're not going to be a completely work from home culture. There's signals of where we're going to go either way. You have Facebook, who's allowing people to work from home, I think, through the end of the summer or the end of this year. I forget. But at the same time, they purchased several buildings in New York City for office space that they're going to be opening in January 2022. So I think ultimately, it's our work environment is going to be more flexible for us. Smart Sites as a company, we're gonna, once we reopen, I foresee us allowing much more flexibility of how often you could work from home. I also think as a company where in the U.S. At the start of this year, 100% of our labor workforce was worked in our physical Paramus, New Jersey office. I think in the future, maybe half will work in that office and half will be remote from different states and different locations where we don't need to have an office. So just to frame the conversation, I think that's where we're heading. I think people will be going back to offices. I think they'll just have a more flexible work schedule, and I think a lot of companies are gonna just be more flexible in allowing their work from homes and how many times a week. But I think regardless, people will go back to offices. Second part of that question was, does it affect outbound telemarketing and direct mail? I don't think so. I think those industries have been around for a long time. I think they will adapt. Uh, in terms of if you're sending direct mail to an office that permanently closed, I guess it'll affect it. But if you're sending direct mail to a business office that has flexible work schedules, is it going to really affect anything? Not really. I think there's going to be, I'm certain there's going to be some businesses, right, that will go all remote. But I think ultimately a lot of them are just going to be more flexible. So I don't think there'll be a big effect on telemarketer and direct mail.
Thanks. I mean, and we've also seen changes. One of the events we run is in the bar and beverage industry. Obviously, many bartenders are not in their bars right now. And so there's a big push from media outlets to find home addresses. And I think that's happening in a lot of industries. But now there's so much email that it's like, no, let's try direct mail again, just to kind of cut through the noise. It's very interesting. Thanks, Eric, for that question. Courtney asked, consumers have an increased desire to see brands take a stand on social issues. Do you think this impacts brands' futures as it never has before in other generations?
Good question. So it's that's been a mixed bag. It, I don't want to discourage companies from taking social stands, but I've seen companies take social stands and get hurt on it because no matter what kind of stand you take, you'll probably alienate some part of your consumer base. So it's tricky. I will say that the younger generation feels that it's a lot more important, and as they grow up and become a bigger part of the consumer base, I think it will be more important. Should every single business take social stances on every single topic? I think no. If it's something near and dear to the company, maybe yes. But it's tough. It depends on the company. It depends on the people. I've seen a lot more of this and more of these kind of questions from California and from New York than any other state. The other states, when I do speeches, this never comes up. I think California comes up the most often. It's tough because taking a social stance along with alienating your possible customers, you could also alienate your employees. It's tough to really gauge if all your employees are on the same page. You have the thought that if it's the right stance to take, the employees that are not on the same page should quit, right? But it's tricky. For those that follow the cryptocurrency space, Coinbase, who's the biggest cryptocurrency platform, who are looking to go public soon, they took the stance that they don't want to be politically active, and that if it's a problem for any employees, that leave and here's your severance package. And some people actually left, and some of their better people actually left. So you really can't win. They instead of being on one side of the social spectrum or the other, they just said they don't want to. It's a workplace, it's a company. They don't want to be a social advocate of political change, and even that hurt them. So it's tough for me to comment on it.
Yeah, Oscar chimed in there too to say it's very tricky, which I think is the best way to describe this. He's saying listen closely to your stakeholders, and it depends on whether the company's mission and values align with the social cause. I think too, it's like if you're Nike and you're too big to fail, right? Like you can go ahead and speak out on something and know that if you alienate a certain audience, you're still going to be okay next year, you know. But yeah, so thank you for that insight. Matt asks, because we only have 10 minutes left and we have so much stuff to talk about. Is email marketing the way to go heading into 2021? Or since there's been such a huge influx of messaging to inboxes, is going back to direct mail a way to go against the grain for better response? We were sort of talking about that.
Good question. I'll try to, I could talk about this for more than the 9 minutes we have left, so I'll try to be brief. I remember the time that it was very exciting to load up your computer, wait the 15 minutes for it to boot up, and open up your email to see if you have any new emails, including spam mails. Spam was just as exciting as regular emails, and open rates were like 85%. Those days are obviously long gone. I think generally speaking, we've had a lot more interest from our clients to do email marketing, probably because you can't reach offices that are closed with direct mail. I think it's gotten to a point where consumers are getting too much spam these days, and I've seen open rates decline a good amount. You really have to be creative to get good open rates. I think email continues to be very popular as people use it as a very important communication tool, both personally and work-based. But it's more and more challenging to be successful with it. I think direct mail will definitely have some kind of comeback, as mail is becoming almost like email was, right? Like when I check my mail and I get something interesting, I actually get excited to open it to see what it is, as opposed to a couple of years ago, I think I was just dumping everything I got in the physical mail in the trash. So I think ultimately it'll have a little bit of a comeback. But aside from email, I think if you are doing email, it just has to be more creative and has to be more integrated into your marketing strategy. With Google, for example, you could target people on Gmail based on the content of the email they're looking at. So not only can you email people things, you could serve them a display ad based on an email someone else sent them. So there's some integration and some overlap with some other emerging media that I think could be used to help email, and I think in the short term, open rates and all of that will continue to fall, but I think eventually it'll even out, and it won't. I don't think email is going away, but I don't think it's the number one successful medium for 2021.
Thank you. Yeah, we at my company ended up getting, because we have so many shows and we have like Comic-Con and shows around the world, and we ended up getting blacklisted because of so many things that now are, filtered, and it's, the volume and making sure that you're cleaning your data, and we have to be so much smarter about it to actually make sure it gets into the inbox, and into like the primary inbox.
Spam laws are very tight, and they've been for a lot of years, but you now see internet service provider be better at enforcing them and much quicker at stopping spam outbreaks. So I agree with that. I've seen that as well. It's very easily to get spam listed, or even with Gmail, obviously having such a big market share, if a couple of people mark your email as spam, or if their AI algorithm detects that you're sending too much and it looks promotional, it'll dump you into a promotional mailbox where no one will ever see it or open it. So it's definitely a lot of that going on.
Thank you. All right, our last two questions are really great. I'm going to ask them both to make sure we get them in our last 5 minutes, and they're related. Oscar asked, given that the future is uncertain, what is one thing all brands should keep in mind to stay afloat and flourish? And maybe related is Karen's question, what's emerging for digital marketers that most of us haven't heard of yet? This is where you play the Zoltar part.
All right, I'll tackle the first one. I think it's easier. Um, Brands should keep in mind to stay afloat and flourish. So I wrote an article for Digital Dealer magazine about this the other day that I think it's actually going to get published today. But the way I see it for brands, and not just automotive, I think it's the same for all brands. I think, and I said it at the beginning, but I'll lay it out a little more clearly. I think it's very important to be agile. Conditions really change on a week-to-week basis these days. Even in the auto space, where a couple of years ago, auto brands and dealerships planned out their marketing a quarter in advance or sometimes a year in advance. These days, you really have to work on a week-to-week basis. So being agile is really, really important. The second piece that's equally as important is flexibility. I think no matter what you do or what you sell, whether you sell a service or you sell some kind of product or you do retail, I think being flexible with the way consumers could interact with you, the way they could find you, the way they could purchase from you is going to be super, super important. If someone lands on your website, you really should give them the opportunity to call you, to email you, live chat you if it's possible, text message you. Everyone has really different comfort levels with both in person, with the way COVID's affecting them, and with digital formats. That you really to succeed, you have to be flexible and make it as easy as possible for all your consumers to interact with you. um, I think those are the big two, and really look out for any kind of changes, and be quick to react to them. I think we will see a lot of change in the next 3 months. I'm hoping a lot of it's positive, but it's going to be industry by industry, and consumer behavior is still changing. This digital stuff is new for a lot of the older folks, so you really have to be patient with consumers as they transition to all of this, and some transition back to in-person things after COVID levels go down. What was the last question? What's emerging for digital marketers that most of us have not heard of it yet? I think generally speaking, digital space continues to head towards personalization in terms of messaging. It's no longer effective to market the same message, the same creative to the entire population, right? You should be presenting different messaging and different creative based on where people are in the consumer journey, based on whatever other data you have about the consumer. Consumers more and more expect things to be personalized, and maybe Amazon is one of the best with this, where when you check out, they suggest related products, or even when you're looking at a product, right? You're buying some toy for the holidays for someone, right? And then you scroll down, and Amazon suggests you buy these batteries with the toy because the toy doesn't come with it. Really kind of personalized recommendations, personalized advertising. I think at one point consumers were very um, I can't say scared, but there was a lot of privacy concerns about being targeted, right? That Google and everyone owns this information, and they could target you with this. And a lot of people are still concerned. There's still a lot of privacy implications, but I think consumers are getting to a point where they're becoming more accepting of personalized advertising. I think that's going to continue to be the trend. Um, I think. I think going forward, some of the audience stuff I talked about on Google is going to be new, that hasn't been done before. And I think the same story that's been the trend the last, I want to say, 18 to 24 months is going to be the use of machine learning, that you really should be using your data and data analytics to make automated decisions. It shouldn't be that you look through your Google Analytics and you see that female consumers spend more on your website, and you go into Google Ads and you manually adjust bidding on female consumers. That might have worked 5 years ago, but it won't in today's world. Everything should really be data driven, and it should be on the fly. Google calls it auction time bidding. So Google, with their machine learning and the API you feed into it, could on the fly, between the time someone types in a search and presses search, and between time the ads serve, in that fraction of a second, could actually adjust which ads serve, how much you want to pay for that ad, and really adjust tons of tons of metrics for that consumer, literally on the fly, using your data that they pull from Google Analytics. So I think that's where everything is heading. I think that's what it's going to take to be successful. I think manual adjustments, no matter how frequent, are not going to be sufficient anymore. Everything should be data driven and automated. And as marketers, our job is to really help with the strategy and make sure that the strategy component is there, and let the AI and machine learning do its thing. I think I made it right in the last second, right?
You literally right to the buzzer. That was like your Hail Mary at the end there. But I'm glad that it's letting us go a little bit over time. Alex, thank you so much. As I mentioned in the chat, Alex has made himself available also for one-on-ones. If you've got some specific questions for him, you can find him in the delegates list. Always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll talk when times are just a little brighter.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.